It's been a few weeks since we found Clarence's grandson, Noah. He and his wife, Catherine, invited me and Zachary to stay with them, and we accepted, knowing that there's not a safer place for us to go. We've been spending all of our time combing through every single detail of Grandpa's journals, photographs, letters, and other things that came from the attic. But just like I didn't, Noah doesn't recognize anyone from the photographs besides his grandfather, so those are probably going to be no help to us. When we move on to reading the letters, we don't find anything useful in those either. Most are just love letters written back and forth between my grandma and grandpa, talking about how much they miss each other and how they can't wait to see the other. Some mention the current place he's visiting and what he and his team are up to, but none of them say anything about the changeling. Then while looking over the journal entries once again, I start to get extremely angry. My grandfather's last words in his final journal entry said, "Now I just have to figure out how I'm going to tell Martha." But he never did tell her. "Here you go," Zachary interrupts, handing me a cup of steaming coffee. I close the journal and take it from him with a smile. "Thank you." "Did you find anything?" he asks me. "No, not yet." Just then, Catherine shouts that it's time for dinner. So I gently place the journals back into the box and then start heading toward the kitchen. After making my plate, I take a seat at the table next to Zachary. "So, any ideas yet?" Noah questions. The four of us look around the table at each other, hoping that someone will speak up. But there's nothing but silence. Finally, after a minute, Noah continues, "It's okay. Let's just sleep on it. Hopefully after a good night's sleep, we'll think of something." We start to eat when suddenly we hear the sound of a car in the driveway, causing all of us to freeze. In the 2 weeks that Zachary and I have been here, the only time we've left the house was when we went to the store to pick up some ginger and iron filings so that I could make more of my special spray. Then I handed out a can of it to everyone. And no one, except for the grocery delivery guy, has stopped by. "Are you expecting someone?" I ask. "No," Catherine replies, as Noah gets up from the table and peeks out the window. Just as we hear a knock at the door, he answers, "Nothing to worry about. It's just our neighbor Ken from down the street. I'll be right back." When he returns a couple of minutes later, Catherine asks him, "Well, what did he want?" His daughter was selling Girl Scout cookies, so I bought a few boxes of gingerbread. We finish eating dinner, then watch a movie with Noah and Catherine's 3 children before we go to bed. Their son Noah Jr. is 8, and their 2 daughters, Caitlin and Kenzie, are 5 and 3. They're the sweetest kids in the world, but being around them is kind of bittersweet. It reminds me of Tim and how we didn't get the chance to start a family of our own. If we'd had a home like they do, where I knew my kids would always be protected, maybe things would have been different. As I settle into bed that night, I start to think about what we can do to take down the changeling. We know of all the ways to hurt it, but we need somewhere to trap it, like Grandpa had it locked up in the attic all that time. I've thought of luring it back to Grandma's old house and locking it away in the same place, but I could never go on living my life knowing that someone could very well buy that house at any time. And what if they have children who are adventurous and like to explore? What if they find that secret little door in the attic, just like I did when I was a little girl? If it was ever let loose again, there's no telling the havoc and chaos it would cause. It would be so furious that someone from my family trapped it away again. I don't even want to think about what might happen. And not only that, Zachary could have a family by then. I fall asleep thinking about Zachary getting married and one day having kids of his own. When I awake the next morning, everyone else is already up. I get dressed and head down to the kitchen for some breakfast. Catherine is homeschooling her 2 older kids while Kenzie is sitting in the living room watching cartoons. "Where's Zachary?" I ask Catherine. "Oh, he's down in the basement with Noah." I make a bowl of oatmeal, then after finishing it, place my bowl and spoon in the sink. "Is it all right if I go down?" "Of course," she tells me. So I open the basement door and then make sure to close it behind me. As I descend the stairs, the basement opens up into a massive space. I can hear Noah and Zachary's voices coming from another part of the basement, so I follow them. As I get closer, I realize that their voices are coming from a room. I knock on the closed door, and then Noah opens it a second later. "Hey, you're finally up. Come on in." When I enter, I'm immediately blown away. Noah told us that he had a room full of weaponry in the basement, but I never expected this. All 4 walls are completely covered with different types of weapons: crossbows, axes, various sized and shaped guns, knives, pipe bombs, you name it, it's here. "So, Zachary has an idea," Noah tells me. "Okay, what is it?" "Well, Catherine hasn't heard it yet either, so why don't we head back upstairs so that we can tell the 2 of you together?" So we follow him up, and then we all go into his office to talk in private so that the kids won't hear us. Noah Jr. knows what's going on, but they haven't told the girls yet because they don't want to scare them. "Zachary, why don't you tell them what you were thinking?" Noah says. Zachary lets out a deep breath, then begins. "I was doing some research and I found out that there's a prison about 100 miles from here. It's been abandoned for like 20 years. I was thinking that maybe we could somehow lure it out there and then trap it inside one of the cells." As he pauses, I think about it for a moment. "I don't know, Zachary. I mean, it's not a bad idea. It could work. But what if some curious teenagers go out there one night just to hang out? Or what if one day it's turned into a museum or haunted attraction, just like a lot of other abandoned prisons are? What if someone stumbles upon it one day and sets it free? Then what?" "Well, I don't know. I didn't think about that." Noah interrupts. "I think maybe this could work. What if we can manage to get it into the basement of the prison? It's nearly falling apart. I don't think anyone would be crazy enough to go down there. It's too dangerous." "If it's really that dangerous, then why would you want us to go down there?" Catherine asks. "Don't worry. I'll be the one to lure it into the basement. I just need the rest of you to keep watch and make sure that it doesn't overpower me and escape," Noah assures her. "You can't go down there by yourself. You need someone to watch your back and shoot it with the tranquilizer gun while you distract it, or vice versa. I'll come too," Zachary says. "The hell you will. No, I'll go." "Abby, please let me do this. I want to help." As much as I want to tell him that the best way for him to help is for him to stay here at the house with Noah's kids, that way I know he'll be safe and sound. I know that will only make things worse between us. He's still mad at me about us having to leave Tim behind, and he's already told me so many times before how tired he is of me treating him like a baby. And maybe he's right. Maybe this is the time to stop doing that. Or maybe not, I quickly think to myself. I've already come face to face with it, and I'm not afraid to fight it again if I have to. Noah interrupts. "Hopefully it doesn't come to that." "It will. It always does," I whisper. Catherine arranges for her mother to come watch the kids while we're gone. She tells her that we're going on vacation and that we'll be gone for a few days, although it could be longer. We pack up both of our cars full of food and weapons. Grandma's trunk comes in handy because that's where I store them. On the drive out to the prison, I have a little heart-to-heart conversation with Zachary. If the changeling does show up, you better listen to me and Noah. No running off after it again trying to be a hero. Do you hear me? It takes a minute for him to answer, but he tells me what I want to hear. "Okay." "Promise me," I say, glancing at him out of the corner of my eye. "I promise." Once we arrive at the prison, it's just starting to get dark, so we use the last little bit of daylight to lug all of our stuff inside. The tall weeds surrounding the building are growing out of control. The windows are cracked, some shattered, and tiny pieces of glass are sparkling in the last little bit of light on the ground. A misty fog encircles the place like a rain cloud getting ready to unleash a torrent. Immediately, I sense that this place has an eerie and sinister feeling to it. We really don't have a way of knowing when the changeling's coming, but I have a feeling that it won't be long. It has to be able to sense that we're all together. Just as we bring in the last of our stuff, it starts to rain and the wind picks up speed. Noah parks the cars nearby in the woods. When he returns and closes the door behind us, a chill runs through me, causing goosebumps to form on my skin, and I shiver. The first night there, we decide that it's probably best if we stick together. So we set up shop in a small room right next to the front entrance. Then we eat some cold soup for dinner and sit around talking. When it starts to get late, everyone but Catherine crawls into their sleeping bags. We're going to take turns keeping watch, and she's up first. But even when it isn't my turn, I don't get much sleep. The wind is howling, and the rain is pelting the building, finding its way in through every crack and crevice. I wake up a few times during the night when I think I hear something, or when I feel something wet drip onto my face. When we all get up the next morning, Noah says something that gets me thinking. He starts talking about the changeling and says how maybe it didn't come last night because it only appears every now and then, sometimes not for years. That's when I realized that it's always been the same way for us too. So the only thing that could mean is that when it wasn't harassing them, that's when it would be looking for me and torturing my family and vice versa. Once he's finished, I chime in. It's been taking turns tormenting us, hell-bent on revenge. It's never going to stop until we're all dead. Both of our bloodlines gone forever, wiped off the face of the earth. Or maybe it didn't come last night because the four of us have never all been together in the same place at the same time. Maybe we need to split up, Zachary suggests. As much as I hate the idea, I think that maybe he could be right. So we decide to separate and search the prison. We have walkie-talkies to communicate with each other, just in case our cell phones don't work once we get deeper inside. We have a faint signal now, but who knows how long it'll last. Zachary starts to say something, but already knowing that he's going to suggest that he and Noah go together, I shoot him a look, and he instantly says, never mind. If it's alright with you two, I think that Zachary and I should stay together. Okay, I'm fine with that, Catherine replies. Noah nods his head in agreement. Before going our separate ways, each pair takes a tranquilizer gun, flashlights, 2 cans of pepper spray, a pair of iron chain handcuffs, and our choice of another weapon. Zachary instantly reaches for a pipe bomb, but I quickly reach out my hand and stop him. We don't want the whole place coming down while we're still inside, I warn him. So then he opts for a crossbow instead, that shoots arrows with iron tips, which Noah made himself. I choose a small pistol. I know it won't do much to hurt or stop the changeling if we have a run-in, but I figure the least it'll do is slow it down, and that's all I need. Then me or Zachary can shoot it with the tranquilizer and lock it up in the iron handcuffs until we can get it to the basement. We wish each other luck and then separate, making plans to meet back up in a few hours. Although it's daylight outside, in here it's still as black as night. Light only shines through the few broken windows in the front of the building. The rest are all boarded up, blocking out any light trying to sneak in. I flick on my flashlight as Zachary and I take a left and walk through a door that leads us into what looks like some sort of waiting area. As we walk through, scoping out the area, our footsteps echo throughout the empty halls. What if it doesn't show up? Zachary whispers. Then we'll think of something else. Then he walks a few steps ahead of me, stops, and turns around to face me. I have to tell you something, but first promise me that you won't be mad. I give him a look like, what did you do now? Then I let out a sigh. Alright, I promise. A few nights ago, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Tim. I just wanted to know if he was alright. So I called him. How did you do that? You know his number by heart? He nods his head. A pang of guilt washes over me. I don't even know his number from memory. As much as I want to scold him, I know that now isn't the time, and I promised him that I wouldn't be mad. So I ask, well, did he pick up? No, it was pretty late. I think it was nearly midnight. But he called me back the next day. How do you know it was him that called back? What if the cops have his phone? I know it was him because when I picked up, I heard his voice. I didn't reply because I didn't want him to know it was me, but I'm sure it was him. So he must be okay, he tells me excitedly with a smile. That's great news, I reply. We're now walking down a hallway, and at the end of it is a door that leads into where the cells are. As we walk through the door, a sudden chill fills the air. Zachary grabs my hand and we start to walk past the dark cell blocks. As we creep past each one, I pause and look inside, imagining brutal murderers locked behind the bars and the wardens and corrections officers treating them like the animals they are. My heart rate ticks up a notch and my palms start to sweat. Zachary feels it and lets go of my hand. Are you alright? I look him in the eyes and whisper, "Yeah, I'm fine, just a little nervous." In the distance, we can hear the faint sound of water dripping. As we approach the cell that it's coming from, I see that it's dripping from an old rusty pipe and splashing into a puddle on the floor. "How long do we have to look around this place? It smells like sewage and trash," Zachary complains. "Just a little longer," I tell him. We make it to the end of that cell block and turn around to head back. That's when I hear a click, like the sound of a door locking. What was that? I frantically shine the light around. Probably just the wind. Come on, let's get out of here. I go marching back down the corridor, past the cell blocks, but when we try to leave through the same door that we just entered through, it's locked. I turn and glance at Zachary, and a look of panic is covering his face. I bang on the door, the sound echoing throughout the empty building. Then I remember the walkie-talkie. "Noah? Noah, can you hear me? Abby, is everything all right? I thought I heard banging." "No, I don't know how, but we got locked inside of this room." "Where are you?" "From the front entrance, you make a left, then walk through a door that leads you into a waiting area. Then go straight back to another door, and that's where we are." "All right, we'll be there soon." Just as Noah says that last word, suddenly a loud creaking floods the room. I turn around, terror and fear running through me. Zachary is still facing the door, frozen stiff, too afraid to move. I shine my light down the corridor, but suddenly it starts to flicker and then goes out. "Damn it, Zachary, give me your flashlight." He lifts only his left hand and gives it to me, still unable to move the rest of his body. I shine it back down the corridor. My heart skips a beat when I see that the door to the very last cell is standing wide open now. When Zachary and I were just down there, it was closed. All of the cell doors were. I lift the walkie-talkie to my lips. "Noah, where are you?" A minute goes by and nothing comes over the walkie-talkie except for static. So I ask again. "Noah, where are you guys? What's taking so long?" Just then, there's a bang on the door behind us, and I turn to see Noah and Catherine through the small rectangular window. They open the door. "Boy, am I glad to see you guys." "Why, is something wrong?" Noah questions. Zachary is still standing there silent. "We heard strange noises, and then one of the cell doors opened by itself," I reply, shining the flashlight toward it. "So we're definitely a little freaked out." Noah starts walking down the corridor toward the open door. When he reaches it, he shines the light around inside of the cell. "Nothing here. Must have just been the wind or something," he says, shrugging his shoulders. We head back to the room near the front entrance that we stayed in last night. Then Noah tells us, "I say we stay one more night. If it doesn't show up by tomorrow, then we'll pack up and leave. But I also think that we should split up again and sleep somewhere else tonight." Noah assures us that everything will be fine, but I'm not so sure after the creepy stuff that just happened to me and Zachary. He tells us that him and Catherine will sleep in the boiler room right down the hall from the basement. I tell him that I don't know which room Zachary and I are going to sleep in, but in the back of my mind I'm thinking that it's either going to be really close to the front entrance or maybe even in the car. We pack up our sleeping bags and grab the gear that we'll need, leaving the rest behind, then part ways once again. This time we take a right, then walk down a flight of concrete stairs. They lead us into the chow hall, or what remains of it. There are tables lined up, leading all the way from the door to the back wall. Cobwebs are covering every inch of the walls and ceiling. We cautiously enter, stepping over trash strewn all across the floor. "What in the hell is that smell?" "Probably rotten food," I say, pointing to a tray full of mold sitting on one of the tables. We walk through the chow hall into the kitchen and then through a back door that leads downstairs. "Where do you think this goes?" "I'm not sure." As we get closer to the bottom of the steps, I start to hear something. I turn around and tell Zachary, "Shh." He stops. "What? Did you hear something? I nod my head. Do you think it's the changeling? I shrug my shoulders and pull out my gun. When Zachary sees me get mine out, he gets the tranquilizer gun ready. Then we proceed to tiptoe the rest of the way down the stairs. Right as we reach the bottom, I notice that the wall is covered with graffiti. Then as I peek my head around the corner, I hear the hiss of a spray paint can and see 3 teenagers. 2 of them are standing around smoking a cigarette while the other spray paints the walls. I lower my gun, turn around and start shoving Zachary back up the stairs. When we're far enough away, I whisper, "See, I knew this was a bad idea. There's a bunch of kids out there hanging around, just like I said." I pull out my walkie-talkie. "Noah, we've got a problem." "What's wrong?" "I just found a bunch of kids loitering around down here." "Damn. Alright, head back to the front entrance. I think we better get out of here." "Okay." Just as I hook the walkie-talkie back onto my belt loop and turn to head back upstairs, I hear something that stops me in my tracks. "Hey guys, there is somebody else in here." I turn around and see a girl who looks about 16. Then a second later, her 2 friends come around the corner. "I told you I thought I heard something," the other girl says. "So, are you some kind of ghost hunters or something?" she asks, staring at all of our gear. "Or something," I answer. "Look, we didn't mean to bother you. You can go back to whatever it was you were doing. We were just about to leave," I tell them. The boy just stands there staring back and forth at both Zachary and I. He's giving me a real creepy feeling, so I reach into my jacket pocket and grip my pepper spray. I don't think he's the changeling, but if these kids try anything, like maybe attempting to rob us, it'll work just as good on them. "Come on, let's go," I say to Zachary. Just as we start to walk away, one of the girls asks, "Hey, are you from around here? What's your name?" Not wanting to be rude, Zachary replies, "No, I'm not, and my name's Brandon." Then we start walking up the stairs again. Just as we reach the top of them and get ready to walk through the door, I realize that they're following us. The one girl speeds up and ends up walking next to me, while the other falls back and is walking behind me next to Zachary. The boy is walking alone behind all of us. "My name's Nikki. I've always been so obsessed with this kind of stuff. I think it's so cool," she says to me, touching the extra can of pepper spray attached to my backpack. "Please don't touch that," I tell her, sounding annoyed and hoping that her and her friends take a hint. But she just continues to go on until we make it back to the front entrance. I try my best to ignore her and start packing up the rest of my stuff in a hurry to get out of this place now that they're here messing up everything. That's when I realize that the girl talking to Zachary has now pulled him aside and they're standing out in the hallway talking to each other. She's a very pretty girl. I can tell he's attracted to her and likes the attention she's giving him. So I don't bother to say anything. The other 2 kids have followed me into the room and are going through our stuff, touching everything. As annoying as it is, and as aggravated as I'm getting, I tell myself that they're just a bunch of teenagers curious about what we're doing. They think we're ghost hunters and that it's super cool. I probably would have thought the same thing when I was their age, if I wasn't being tormented by the very thing that I'm hunting. "Wow, what are these?" Nikki asks, picking up one of my grandpa's journals from the box. "Put that back. Please don't touch anything." She places it back inside and apologizes. I peek out into the hall to see what Zachary's doing. Him and the other girl are still talking. He's saying something to her and she's smiling from ear to ear. Finally, Noah and Catherine make it back and they start to help me pack up the rest of our stuff. Noah asks the kids, "What are you guys doing here anyway?" Nikki replies, "We always hang out around here. There's nothing else to do in this boring little town." The boy, who hasn't said a single word this entire time, walks off and starts looking through the trunk full of weapons. I try to keep a close eye on him, but there's so much going on. I don't want that girl to walk off with Zachary and then we have to go looking for him, and we're trying to pack up everything as fast as we can. That's when I see that Noah is watching him like a hawk, so I take another peek out into the hall. Zachary and the girl are still talking. I wonder what in the world they're talking about, How much do you really have to say to someone that you just met? I hope he's not telling her anything he shouldn't. Hey, put that back! I bet you thought I didn't see that, you little asshole, Noah shouts. I turn around to see what all of the commotion is about, and that's when I see Noah yelling at the boy. He's still standing near the trunk full of weapons and attempting to slip a gun into his pocket. Thankfully, I already know that it's not loaded. He hands the gun to Noah, and then Noah starts to yell at the kids. Alright, you guys need to get the hell out of here right now, before you get into trouble. Nikki rushes over to the boy. Come on, let's get out of here. The two of them start walking toward the door. And don't forget your other friend, I call after them, talking about the girl who's still standing there talking to Zachary. Who cares about her? We don't even know her. We just ran into her right before we met you guys. A wave of fear and anxiety hits me all at once as soon as she finishes that sentence. I start running over to Zachary, and that's when I overhear something that the girl says to him. I think that's so cool, Zachary. Yeah, I guess, he replies. But just as he says it, he realizes the same thing that I just did. Wait a minute. How do you know my name is Zachary? That's not what I told you it was. That's when she says, I know everything about you. And her hand starts to transform into a claw. She raises it high in the air, attempting to strike him. But with my gun already drawn and pointed at her, I pull the trigger. The two kids run into the back of me, attempting to stop me. What in the hell are you doing? As the changeling slumps to the ground, a gasp comes out of their mouths when they see it stand back up, showing its true, terrifying, putrid face. I pull the trigger again and let off the last 3 rounds. And everyone goes running in opposite directions. Noah, Catherine, and Nikki run off in one direction, while me, Zachary, and the boy go running in the other. We end up back down in the cell block area, and as much as I don't want to be there, I'd much rather not die. So I lead the way into one of the cells, then we turn off our flashlights and the 3 of us crouch inside. The boy's sitting there, drenched in sweat and shaking uncontrollably. Hey, what's your name? I ask him. Dylan, he whispers. What was that thing? Just as I'm about to answer him, my walkie-talkie goes off.
Abby, where are you?
Catherine asks, so quietly that it's barely audible. I unhook the walkie-talkie from my belt loop and lift it to my lips, then whisper.
Where the jail cells are. We'll be right there.
See, everything's going to be fine. Noah and Catherine are on their way. Then we can finally capture this thing, I tell them. Suddenly we hear the door burst open. We wait in terror to see if we hear Noah or Catherine's voice, but a moment later, when those familiar snarls and growls flood the room, we know who's here. I know you're in here. I can smell your filthy stench. I cringe at the sound of its voice. Zachary and I huddle close together as it begins to walk down the dark corridor. We can hear its claws scraping against the concrete and its rapid breaths as it gets closer. I squeeze my eyes closed so tight that a tear slides down my cheek. Just as it passes by the cell that we're hiding in, Noah and Catherine enter the room. I cover my ears as gunshots and screams echo all around us. Then I cut on my flashlight and see that the changeling is all the way on the other side of the room, trying to escape the hail of bullets, so I tell Zachary and Dylan to run. But just as they exit the cell, the changeling is there so fast, and it grabs Dylan. A look of pure fear crosses his face. Get the hell out of here now, Noah shouts at Nikki. She takes his advice and goes running out the door. Let him go. He's not the one you want, I beg. The changeling glares at me, its thick tongue slithering in and out of its mouth like a snake, and drool dripping from the corners. Dylan starts screaming as the changeling sinks its razor-sharp teeth into his neck, ripping out a chunk of his spine, and then it just spits it on the floor as it laughs. Then his body collapses to the ground in a heap. That's when Noah shoots the tranquilizer gun, but it's so dark he misses, and the dart goes zooming right past the changeling and hits the wall. The next thing I know, I hear Catherine screaming. I don't even know how she got over there, but she's standing at the end of the corridor, pushing open the door to the very last cell. Come on, get it in here! Then I see Zachary with the crossbow in his hands, and he shoots it. An agonizing screech reverberates through the room. Zachary has shot it with one of the iron-tipped arrows, and Noah is placing crushed eggshells in the doorway so that it can't escape. The angry yet terrified look that I see in the changeling's eyes gives me so much satisfaction I can't even explain it. I think it's realized that we're trying to trap it. It panics, and with swiftness it charges at Catherine, digging its claw into her leg and tosses her across the room, sending her slamming into Noah and knocking him off of his feet, sending them both tumbling back, which prevents him from finishing laying out the eggshells. Her scared, agonized screams fill the air. I grab my pepper spray, step out of the cell, and aim it at the changeling. When I hear the sizzle and it starts to screech, I know that I got it. Its screeches get louder. Then as it runs past Noah, seeing that it has a little bit of space left in the doorway since he didn't finish placing the eggshells, it yells. You think all of you together makes you stronger. All you did was make it easier for me. You put both your filthy bloodlines in one place and made it easy pickings. Then it dashes through the opening in the doorway as Zachary starts shooting arrows at it again, trying his best to stop it, but it gets away and breaks through one of the windows. I rush over and kneel next to Noah, who has already gone to check on Catherine. Oh my God, is she alright? Noah examines her wound. I think so. It's not too deep. She needs stitches, but she'll be okay. God damn it! We almost had it, he screams, throwing his flashlight across the room. It hits the wall and shatters into pieces. I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. This was such a stupid plan, Zachary cries. No, it wasn't a stupid plan, but I had a feeling that it might not work, Noah says. Then he tells us not to worry, that he has another plan in mind. We're going to have to be the ones to watch over it. That's the only way we can stop it. The house that kept it out this entire time is going to have to be the prison that keeps it locked away forever. I nod my head in reply, and the next time it rears its ugly head, we'll make damn sure it's the last time. Don't forget to subscribe for new stories weekly. See you next time on
Nina's Nightmares.
Really? You're supposed to click the like button, not me. Ugh.